Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to Red Hot Talk once again. And hello, everybody. I just want to say hi quickly before we jump into our discussion today, because I have a few things to say. And obviously, apparently, Rod has some experience about certain things that we're talking about today. And we're going to explore a little bit of that. But it's a whole thing that got me thinking about making today's chat is because of one news in particular that caught my attention this morning from BBC. So I was reading some morning news as usual, every morning sitting at a breakfast table and just open up the iPad and look at today's news. And one article is talking about Sony, right? We're not talking about Sony cameras, but Sony PlayStation. Okay, so the news is basically covering the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 is reaching its 5th year. So this is the 5th year anniversary for the PlayStation 5. I couldn't believe how old the PS5 is already. I thought it's still like 2 years old, but apparently it's already 5 years old. So based on the trajectory of and the historic point of view of the Sony releases, that PlayStation usually come with a 5 years product cycle. So every 5 years they will release a new version. So that means that this is the 5th year. That means Sony is supposed to release or at least announce PlayStation 6. But the news this morning is saying that Sony is saying that there will be no PlayStation 6, at least for the immediate term, right? So there's no announcement, there's no hinting or anything that's coming in the horizon, nothing about that. But they released one very interesting statement in that article is that, well, the PS5 has a plenty of life plenty of life left. We don't need to hurry about PlayStation 6. Still a lot of gamers playing PlayStation 5, and it's still very good console, has a lot of good titles, everyone's playing with it, and there's no problem. We're rather concentrating on games and the development games and all the other stuff that's coming with it, not the actual hardware. Okay, it was this article that got me thinking about photography. And why is that? Because we're all saying that, these days we have new cameras being released every 2 years, 3 years. And you can see like even the latest Canon R6 Mark III, which only announced this week, it's a 3-year-old camera. The Mark II was 3 years ago. So 3 years on, we got a Mark III. And this pretty much is the timeline that we're looking at all the camera product cycle these days. It's either going to be 2 years, 2.5 years, or 3 years. 3 years is pretty long in today's modern digital camera standard. So is it really getting that fast? That we talked about this many times, that we don't need better cameras because they are really already good enough for 99.9% of us. We don't need an extra 5 frames per second. We don't need another stop of ISO performance because we don't shoot a million ISO, right? We don't need a lot of those stuff that they actively promoting us to use. So that's why I thought, Sony, the game department has this saying, but the camera department is saying something else. The camera departments keep on releasing, Sony A7 series and the A9 series and A1 series and anything in between, right? So I just thought that, maybe we should look at how the gaming industry is and how the gamer themselves behaves compared to us as photographers. So let's go to Rod now, because apparently I only just found out Rod used to review games, right? Or gaming consoles.
Yeah, I worked on games magazines. I reviewed games. It was a little while ago. But my only recent gaming is stuff like Medal of Honor and Gran Turismo. But back in the day, I used to review games on consoles and write about that kind of stuff. But it occurs to me, Jimmy, there's a difference between Sony's PlayStation model and his camera model. Because somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but every PlayStation game that sells, Sony gets a little bit of money. But it doesn't get any money when we take a picture with the Sony camera. So as far as Sony's concerned, it's making money whether or not it makes a new PlayStation. But the camera division will not make any money if we don't buy new cameras. So there's a slight difference, I think. Which maybe explain why Sony's quite happy to sit back and say, it's fine, keep going.
Well, but on the other hand, you can always argue that PlayStation or the PlayStation side of it has that kind of income stream coming from gamers.
Yeah.
But then
yeah.
at the same time, the photography industry, apart from the camera body itself, we have to buy accessories. We have to buy batteries or other things like like lenses to go with the camera, and that's kind of in some way that's the income stream, right? Once you get a body, you got to get the lenses.
I don't think it's quite the same though. I don't think it's quite the same because the PlayStation is like a platform for revenue.
Yep.
Whereas cameras aren't. Cameras, you have to keep buying new gear. Whereas with the PlayStation, Sony doesn't care if you buy a new one. Well, it probably does, but as long as you're buying the games, that's fine. I think Sony will change its mind about the PlayStation 6 when people stop buying PlayStation 5 games. Where are we up to with Microsoft, by the way? Where are we with the Xbox? I'm so out of touch.
I have no idea. Like I said, I'm not a gamer.
Is Microsoft still pushing the Xbox? Because that's like 1 million years old now or something.
I don't know the latest generation, but there was one that's competing with the PS5, right? About 5 years ago when they first launched it.
Oh, the Xbox, yeah. I'm gonna open a new window. If I disappear, I'm gonna have to stop doing that. But Xbox, let's see.
But it's interesting. I would like to hear everybody's thought about this. To me, if there's a way that Sony can do things with the PlayStation, let's say, they get some sort of income stream or maybe license fee from people who buy the game or play the game. To be quite frank, I wouldn't mind that they do it the smartphone ways, right, or the computer ways. If they have digital cameras, they set up some sort of app store. We can pay, to get updated features through the app updates or something, so that the camera can be continue to use until mechanically failed. Whether it's going to be the sensor, the shutters, or whatever. Eventually, it will give way. Whether something's going to fail when it gets too old. But I just find that a lot of cameras these days, people hold on to it for barely like 2-3 years and they switch on. And in most cases, some of these cameras are barely used. You'll be lucky to get about 5,000 actuations in the camera. And I just find that it's wasting a lot of resources, and also it doesn't really let users fully understand and maximize the what the camera can do for them. And to be quite frank, even today, as a lot of the cameras that I personally use, I still can't understand or learn 100% of the menus. I can't understand all of it. I only barely know the scratching the surface, so to speak. Know where to find the custom button is, changing the ISO, shutter speed, and that kind of thing. And like I talked to Rod the other day, I don't even store things in my custom function dial, so I don't even store any of that. I just use the traditional way of operating a camera. I just change ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and that's it. Or moving the AF points. And apart from that, I don't use anything else, rarely. I mean, occasionally maybe some of the computational stuff. But other than that, as long as I can find out how I can change the exposure triangle, I'm happy about a camera. So in that sense, I could use any camera in any era, in any time. And that's the fundamental stuff that I always talk about. You need to master those things before you jump onto all the other special features, special capabilities, because without understanding the basics, you can, if you touch those kind of automations or those features, you might confuse yourself, and you might actually say, why is not getting the result that I want? And, you have to understand the limitation of all those features, because obviously there are specific stuff that when you enable them, and there's always a drawback or some sort of compromises. So you just have to understand all that. And it's not that when you prick a magic button on the camera, it will do everything for you. Suddenly you create a master shot that can win awards. You're not just about that. It's about the fundamentals that is always important for any photographers.
I don't think the Xbox is still going. It's not discontinued,
right?
But I don't think there's going to be another. So Sony's got the console field pretty much to itself,
all by themselves.
At that level. Yeah. So why make a new one? The old Xbox rivalry isn't really there anymore. But it's different. I think consoles have kind of got to the point where cameras have, in that they've become so good. There's nothing you can add without inventing a problem and solving it. So I think that's kind of where cameras have got to. But I do think that the PlayStation revenue model is very different for Sony
Yeah, yeah.
to cameras. And I don't think there's an equivalent income stream for cameras. So all they can do is keep making new ones and get us to buy them.
Well, the thing is, like I think I talked about this last week. When I was showing you guys about the Sony RX100 series, when these guys first came out, Sony actually made an app store for this. So like you can actually buy apps within the camera, which is when it's connected to Wi-Fi. You can actually connect to the app, download specific features that's compatible with the camera. So you can do that. And why don't they continue to do that? I know back in the day this was horrible. The App Store was absolutely horrendous. Like, it's so slow to use.
Memories.
Yeah, it's really horrible. But the concept was
memories.
there. But the thing is, the concept was there.
Yeah.
That means that you could potentially just use it like a smartphone. You can buy apps, buy a new feature. That's another thing, right?
I said that would work if Sony was the only camera maker. But I think what would happen if Sony introduced that, you get a whole bunch of people saying, well, it should have had this stuff in the first place, and now they're making us pay extra. That's cynical. I'm going to buy a Canon. I'm going to buy a Nikon. I'm going to buy a Panasonic.
But I don't know about you.
They'd all have to do it.
Yeah, perhaps. But maybe everyone would think that I'm wrong here. But I thought if camera companies want to, first of all, lengthen the product cycles, make each generations of cameras have a more substantial difference or upgrade compared to the previous generation, you need to lengthen the product cycle. Currently, 2 to 3 years is just too short for any sort of big jump in performance, right? You need at least like 5, 6, 7 years to actually see something different. And to do that, you can continue to earn incomes through feature updates. We're not talking about firmware, but we can actually think adding new features as long as the processor can keep up with it.
Well, you could do what Panasonic did with some of its Vlog stuff and sell a software key.
Yeah.
But then that's an occasional very specific thing. I think if Sony wanted to keep making the same camera for several years, they'd have to find another way to earn money from it. Maybe make it take Sony specific memory cards that you can only use once, and then you archive.
But on the other hand, you can always say that currently, obviously, I'm just using Fujifilm as an example. The X105, is a relatively old camera by today's standard. About 3-4 years old now, and the X Pro 3 is kind of haven't got any successors being kind of rumored at all. It's like, and it's been around for another 5-6 years now. I think the X Pro 3 it's quite old. But people are still using them. There's nothing wrong with them. And like we talked about this in the other camera brands. Any sort of thing, cameras that released 2012 even are more than good enough. If you don't mind, slightly different AF systems, obviously compared to modern day subject trackings and speed of tracking, is obviously it's not as good or as fast, but there's nothing wrong with day-to-day photography. Like how many of us really, to be quite honest, be frank with us, you're not gonna chase something that is driving 100 miles an hour all the time. Most of the time it's just people walking. If you do street photography, how often do you see people sprinting towards you or away from you on the street? So in those scenarios, I don't even see the speed of AF is going to contribute anything or going to make you a better photograph. So in that case, the speed of AF doesn't really matter at all, unless you're obviously shooting birds or and those are very specific use. Okay, though in those scenarios, something like the bird tracking and things like that will be phenomenal. Even pre-focusing, or pre-capture, pro-capture are very useful tools to capture that moment because they move so fast. But other than that, you think about genuinely, how often do you need that kind of speed, right? You don't. And that means we can use anything, right? Anything would do the job.
I think my parallel would be 90% of what we need was around 10 years ago for a lot of us. Not so much for people who do bird photography, because that's quite specialized in terms of AF. But if I think back to, for example, for a while I had a Canon EOS RP alongside an EOS R8. completely different technologies. The only respect in which the EOS R8 was better was the dynamic range was better, which a lot of the time didn't matter. But I didn't find enough difference in the autofocus to worry
Yeah.
about that. The EOS R8 was better at video, but we're talking about cameras years apart. And another example I have is I've got a Nikon D610 from, what would that be, 2012?
Yeah.
And I think, do I use that or do I use my Canon? And unless I'm shooting video, it hardly matters which one I pick up,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, because they're so
Yep.
similar in terms of their stills photography. So we see a lot of improvements with every new generation of camera, but
Yep.
they're very often things we never asked for, and perhaps wouldn't use. Sometimes they are things we ask for, but
Yep.
they become quite a narrow niche.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it didn't help that camera are getting more complicated. You know, no matter how you look at it, they are just getting too complex.
How do we expect camera makers to make any money except by selling us cameras? I mean, I'm not blaming them.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
saying,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what are they to do?
Well, in the olden days, they're looking at user base, right? You know, that the way that they make money is to gain market shares by attracting new customer into the brands, by releasing products that is cool to consumers, because
Yeah,
consumers are the one who's going to spend money. Professional enthusiasts, they get one camera, you know, they're going to be happy for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then they're going to buy lenses to suit whatever they want to do. The market is stagnant now because consumer is no longer in the pool. You know, they've gone outside now.
I suppose my argument doesn't really hold up, does it? Because even back in the days of film, camera
Yep.
makers could only ever sell cameras. They never gained revenue from anything else. So I kind of admit my own argument is quite weak there. But I can't remember what the product cycles were with film cameras.
Film
They
cameras were
seem
5, 6,
quicker
7
today
years.
Yeah, they seem quicker today. Is it because camera makers have got a bit more greedy, or is it because they can only maintain their market share if they're as busy as all their rivals? So if Canon's doing a new generation every 2 years, Sony's got to, Nikon's got to. They've all kind of accelerated their development cycles.
It's peer pressure. It's peer pressure, right? It's just pure peer pressure, and that's partly, you know, down to us as you know, one who buy cameras, right? I think that we now can't expect them to release new things every 2, 3 years, and I don't know. It's like a vicious circle that we're going around at the moment. It's going around and around, and wow, now we're being fed new cameras every 2, 3 years, and we expect them to have 2 or 3 years. As long as they go past that 2, 3 years window, we say, that, okay, this company is dead. This company is not innovating. They're not doing anything. You know, I think in some way we are to blame as well as the photographers, or at least photographers who buy gear. And it's not healthy in that sense. But at the same time, like you said, how are they going to make money? Because the consumer group is no longer there. They're not the consumers are not buying cameras. The consumers are they are buying cool cameras.
I guess the point is that back in cameras' heydays, like the 1980s and 90s, they were selling enough for it to work. But now the audience for what you or I might call proper cameras is much smaller. So they've got to sell them more often.
Well, I mean, I don't know all the numbers on from different makers and stuff, but you know, obviously the point and shoot market, which was the bread and butter for almost all camera companies. I mean, they accounted for literally 80% of the revenues on all sales, and the remaining 20% at those in those times were DSLRs and the big proper cameras. So it's always going to be quite small anyway in terms of population. If you think about it, I don't think that has changed much. It's just that we're losing the point and shoot completely.
The bread and butter cameras have gone, haven't they? Because people use their phones. And so they should. At the most recent point and shoot I tested, wasn't as good as the phone. It's cheap, but it just wasn't quite good enough to use. Just use the phone. Yeah. Which is disappointing.
So I think like the company, the camera companies should really think about ways to to make more money aside from just generating a slightly modified or upgraded camera as a new camera every 2 to 3 years. I mean, that's how I see all this new camera being released in the last 5 years. they are barely, like, I would say, substantial upgrade from the previous generations. To me, I mean, I know there are reviewers saying, "Oh, it's much better this and much better that," but you and I take photographs, right? I just don't
Yeah,
really see that advancement, to be honest.
these days, just about everyone who reviews cameras or lenses professionally is part of an affiliate program. So it the way a reviewer or a publishing company makes money is
Yeah,
people buying stuff. So they're not going to tell people not to buy stuff
yeah.
because that shoots they shoot themselves in the foot. So it's a
It,
kind of cycle of demand, marketing and demand.
Absolutely. No, we got one comment here as well. The fewer different camera models will reduce the development cost. We talk about making money, yeah, but also at the same time, you should think about cost cutting as well. Like when you develop more camera models, even though they may look the same compared to previous generations, but you have to create new mold. Because even you've moved the button like ever so slightly, they rounded the corner a little bit. You need a new tool to make those shells. And even though you may recycle certain bits internally, but that's besides the point. But you still have to have a new production line just to make those new cameras, and it's often a substantial cost when you do all of these slight tweaks and things like that. So if you lengthen the product cycle, and then only saving a lot of money, and but you can potentially sell other stuff like lenses, which they try to keep pushing people to buy lenses. But if they keep releasing camera models, for instance, people are going to leave no budget to buy lenses, and all they do just every 2 to 3 years when they save enough money just to buy that lens. Oh no, there's a new camera come out. Let's buy that new camera instead of buying the new lens that I've dreamed of for the past 5 years.
Possibly.
That's the trouble, right? And lenses are not cheap these days. They are. You talk about like a really good glass from a full frame world. You talk about like 2, 3, 4 grand these days, and even like look at Micro Fours are supposed to be a little bit cheaper. You're still looking at over a grand for those pro lenses. So lenses are not cheap. People do have to save up. I mean, I don't know about you, but or anyone who's listening, I just can't keep up with all of these new things, and as much as I want them, but I don't think that we have enough funds just to buy all of this new stuff, and that would reflect to almost the entire community of photographers. How many of us can continue to fund, the all of these new releases from all camera makers, keep on pumping us every 2 to 3 years? I think that will be the trouble.
I think they're not. I guess they're not expecting us all to buy every new camera. They're just trying to target a section of their user base with particular updates and particular developments. But I think what about the idea of having a camera that did almost nothing without software keys that you could buy in an app store? What if you had a camera that is just basically like my manual Praktica, which should shutter speed and aperture and focusing, and if you wanted autofocus or stabilization or picture styles or raw, then you have to buy the app. But then that's a major shift in camera design that would be equally difficult for camera makers to design. I just think they've gone so far along their current route that they can't turn around.
But I could argue that if they don't change, they would be, at some point there will be some sort of technology or companies coming up with a brand new solution that is so innovative in the camera world that could wipe them out. As much as they are in terms of market shares and the leading positions like the big three, right? The Canon, Nikon, and Sony. But the fundamental design, how they write all these firmwares. I mean, when we spoke to Camera Intelligence, you remember we talked about the AI camera, and I talked to them about how firmwares are being developed. They told me that they're still using basically MS-DOS kind of technologies for writing the camera OS, and that is ancient technologies, and they haven't moved on quite a bit. That's why firmware updates and fixing bugs and things is often take time, and not very good either.
I think in a way the problem is not so much that current camera makers will be overtaken by new technologies. Perhaps the problem is that the cameras have already advanced to the point where they don't need to go any further. Maybe that's the problem, because I think most of us quite happy with the capabilities of the cameras that we
Yeah,
have. We might want better AF, we might want more megapixels, we might want this thing or that thing. But very broadly, they've
yep,
already reached a point where they're enough.
yep,
So I don't know. I think one possibility is that camera makers will simply scale back their production and
yeah.
rethink their priorities. We might get to a point where Sony's team marketing team says, look, we can't keep getting people to buy all these new cameras. We're going to have to scale this back, lengthen the product cycle, and just accept cameras won't make as much as they used to. That might happen,
Well, I'm not
which I
sure
don't
about
think
that.
we'd mind too much about.
I'm not too sure the shareholders would completely agree to that.
Well, that's the thing. You have
that's the thing.
targets, you've got to hit them, haven't you?
Yeah, when you have a sales forecast and the investors say, okay, I want this graph to go up, not down. If you scale back on the productions or lengthen the product cycle, you will see the graph starting to dip because you just haven't got the same sales number.
Yeah.
But that's again, a vicious circle. Yeah,
They might decide it's better to make a smaller profit than a big loss. They might get to that point. Any company would choose that.
but I just think that they need to do something radically different and in order to revive the business. If they can't
But
get
then,
new users, then they have to do something.
but then that's almost dumping us back in this constant upgrade cycle, isn't it? We either say, look, enough is enough, a proper update every 5 years. But if we start saying they've got to do something radical, drastic, new, innovative, we're just fueling the cycle, aren't we?
Well, I don't know. I mean, everything's moving digital. As soon as they move digital, things. I mean, at least in my eyes, is that when they move digital, changing from the old analog to digital, things should have moved quicker. Things should have moved differently. From what I see, how computer being evolving. Look at how smartphone changes over the last 10 years, and everything just shifted completely. And the use of AI in terms of the imagings and the video capturing is phenomenal. The way they can extract from that tiny sensor is just something out of this world. If they can use that effort and have that kind of talent to enhance what they have now, I'm pretty sure they can do 10 times better than everybody else's.
Maybe it's like saying dinosaurs need to learn to speak and write if they want to be successful.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it's a different species. Smartphones and interchangeable lens cameras, they're not the same evolutionary line. They've gone in different directions.
Well, we say that though, but I'm keep bringing it back to camera intelligence, the Kyra AI camera, but that is kind of where this kind of thing come up. When you have literally a computer and merge it with a sensor, and you writing an OS that's kind of like smartphone-like as an app, and that is where the change is starting to happen, I guess.
But is that introducing features that we've actually asked for? Or is it just change in order for change's sake? I think a lot of us here would probably say the camera technology we have is fine. What we don't like is the constant development. And I think Kyra, I think that Kyra, that's an interesting development, but it's a different evolutionary path again.
It's very different path.
I think what they're trying to do is not going in the same direction as most photographers are thinking.
No.
If you have a mirrorless camera, I don't think you're going to want Kyra. If you have a phone, you might, but I don't think you're talking about the same audience.
No, yeah, I can understand that point of view, but at the moment, we were talking about the market, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, traditional photographer like you and I would go for the normal camera, like the traditional camera, because that's how we know about photography. How we capturing photographs is those cameras. But the consumer market, I think that's what Kyra is aiming for. It's the consumers. And those who left the point and shoot market, went with the full smartphone experience, are those people, if they wanted to kind of get a little bit better quality, a little bit better results, while still maintaining kind of like the app experiences that they have with the smartphone, will think Kyra quite interesting. And I don't know. I mean, it could be a different market, but I think that maybe the camera maker should actually starting to look into this kind of thing. Not necessarily they need to change everything, but at least from the interface point of view, at least like how we interact with the camera, we still need physical buttons. As a photographer, I think a tactile physical buttons is important for us. But the interface behind it, I mean, look, we keep talking about menu system, how the menus design and this and that. It's very rigid. They don't change the menu system every 10 years, and it's not something that they can do or adapt to changes fairly quickly because of the way they develop the coding behind it. But with Kyra, it's an app. You can change the look and feel almost overnight if you really want to. You have the resources to do it, and because it's a software-based company, so everything is software-based. So if you map those capabilities to buttons, physical tactile buttons, but have an interface that you can kind of interact with, it could be quite interesting.
But Kyra is heading towards a pay-to-use model, especially with the generative AI.
Yes,
and my other argument would be, I like you I don't enjoy programming a camera with function buttons. I prefer buttons which have clear marked labels. It's simple to figure out as I go along. So I personally have no interest in a camera with speech control or reconfigurable interface or a fluid OS that can be made into all sorts of different things.
Yep.
That doesn't really appeal to me because I like clarity of function. I'd rather adapt to a physical device than have a digital device that learns what I want, because I don't know what I want. I've got no confidence the camera will figure it out.
Well, I mean, in some way, I mean, I think that's the dilemma or the obstacles that many of us face. Like you said, we adapt to cameras because each camera maker has had their own kind of quirks and designs and the way operating it. So if you use one camera for 10 years, for instance, and then you switch brand to another camera, you're gonna have a cultural shock because it's so different, right? I mean, I could say the same thing about Android and iOS. The same thing. If you move from one platform to another, you're always going to face the same thing. Where the icons is, where the setting is, where this and that. It's the same thing. But I think what I'm trying to say is, if I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but I'm thinking if traditional camera makers could potentially look into kind of like a hybrid solutions there, while they can maintaining all of those physical buttons and dials.
I think this argument is going in a different direction, though, isn't it? Because are we saying slow down this constant development cycle?
Yes.
And
yes.
Right now, we seem to be talking about ways to accelerate it. So let's decide which side we're on.
No. That's why I'm leading into it, because if they're starting having this OS things coming, so even though you're maintaining the camera, so things can be upgraded. And when I talk about upgrade, features can be upgraded through the interface. So you can add features as long as the OS or the processor can support, the new functionality. So there will be software developers within the camera companies writing all these new features and testing with the cameras and like increasing certain bits of it, or maybe I'm just for argument's sake, in-body focus stacking, for instance. If that feature is not available when this camera was launched, but obviously the processor is fast enough to process it, and the feature's not there, but if somehow you can just basically throw an app to it and enable it, when it comes out, and the user is benefiting it, but all they have to do is to pay the app. It could be £10, £15, £20, rather than buying a whole new camera just for that feature, which is what's happening right now. You've got new features, but you have to pay a new camera, and it's not you cannot upgrade through firmware, and they deliberately doing that because they know they want to force you to buy a new camera.
I think the proposition behind that camera is that the processor is good for years ahead, which I find quite unlikely. It may be, but the processing hardware in that camera can't be replaced. Will it still be as effective 10 years from now?
Well, I mean,
we'll have to wait 10 years to find out. But at the moment, we're relying on a promise of what it might be able to do, rather than
but
demonstration of what it does.
okay, let's not using Kyra as an example, but look at just normal Android phone and iOS phones, and normal iPhone, for instance. We can, even like iPhone 12, iPhone 11 still function properly, and and I would say 80% of the apps are still functioning perfectly fine with those older phones. So why can't we have the same thing with the camera? Once they have a relatively powerful chipset in there, that they know they can power whatever app they're going to throw in it within the next 5 to 6 years development, and that's more than enough to lengthen the product cycle. And within that 4 to 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, and we can gain constant updates or new features being thrown at it, or we can just simply buy them when we need them or when we want them, instead of every 2 years we have to fork out a big, large sum of money to get a new camera, or to sell the old camera just to fund the new camera purchase. But you're always going to lose money, because all camera money lose money, when you come to sell it.
I seem to remember that I think it was Olympus or OM System made the argument that you couldn't use a generic operating system within cameras because it wasn't fast enough at certain very hardware specific functions, and that's why they used a bespoke chip. So it's possible, I don't know how true it is, that having a camera with an operating system it would be an advantage for programmability and upgrades, but it could be a disadvantage in terms of speed of operation. Perhaps it needs somebody who knows more about this than me.
Well,
to comment on that.
I'm only throwing out because I don't know anything about camera designs or anything like that. But from what I understand, a lot of the time when I talk to camera engineers, and the way they talk, forgive me if I'm saying a bit bluntly, but then the way they talk is almost like talking to me like the computer engineers back in the 80s. It's not 2025, and it's just the way they talk is very, very old school engineering, and it's nothing wrong with that. But I just think that it sounded to me they haven't moved on since, and then though that we are having a lot of very sophisticated camera these days, but the underlying technologies are not actually moving, if you know what I mean.
I seem to remember there have been a couple of Android cameras. The Zeiss ZX1
I remember
is
that.
Android, but I'm not sure how good it was at accommodating newer versions of Android. And I think it's all very well saying that the iPhone is an example of a platform that can be developed with new apps, but the camera capabilities in iPhones are constantly evolving, so you can't get the same results from an iPhone 13 like mine that you can get from a 17 with its new camera hardware and its new processor. So I think phone makers are locked in the same cycle. Even though they have a programmable platform, the hardware is still being constantly redeveloped and new models are being launched. About on the same cycle, really. How frequent is Apple? Every year, 2 years?
Every year.
Yeah. So there will be stuff that the new phone does that the old one can't.
Of course, but that, I'm not saying that iPhone or Android phones are immune to all this crap that we're talking about. They also come into this really frequent cycle, but again, to do with the sales number, right? That's how they push people to buy the new phone, which is exactly the same thing what they do with the camera makers.
It is.
Yeah.
But let's imagine we have cameras that run Android or iOS, so they do have this ability to run apps. It won't be very long before an iOS update comes along that the old hardware can't run. It happens all the time with Mac gear. It takes several years, but my 2013 MacBook Pro still works perfectly, but I can't use the newest version of Mac OS. So software developer to produce software to run on the latest versions, I can't run. And I think the same would happen with any camera that had an OS platform within it.
Oh no, of course. But I'm just hoping that there will be a way just to lengthen this 2-3 year cycle thing to be a little bit longer, 5-6 years, while we're gaining new features rather than buy new camera. I'm just thinking out loud. What else can a camera maker do? And
we can always not buy them. But then
that is true.
We feel terribly. But then we might feel terribly disloyal and worried that our favorite camera brand is going to go out of business because we didn't buy the newest camera.
Yeah,
But
but that
you know, we always have a choice as to whether we buy a new camera or not.
that's a sad reality, right? You know, like I always felt like, you know, um, yeah, we would like to support our favorite brand, camera brand, you know, and we would like to keep buying them, give them business. But you know, that's always going to be mutual, right? And the camera company can't milking us every single time, you know, and they know that the pool of photographers out there is kind of limited and it's not really growing. And then how can they really maximize or squeeze as much as they can from us? And there'll be a point that we just say that we just simply can't do it anymore. And then you know, I just wanted to take photographs, right?
Well, let's see if we can work out a proposition for them. Let's say Sony says, right, here's the Sony A75.
Yep.
It's going to cost £2,500, but we're not going to replace it for 5 years. Would we buy that on that basis?
I think I would.
Would you pay more for a camera that was not going to be superseded for 5 years?
Well, okay, right. Let's put it that way. You know, if I know within the 5 years we're going to get some updates, like firmware updates, like what Fujifilm and OM System used to do, right? You know, actually, a lot of companies used to do it. Give us firmware update, give us new features. They have done that before.
Or just put in the features they promised it would have when they launched it, but they just didn't get around to it. like there are a couple of Nikon cameras that couldn't shoot 4K 60 till Nikon did a firmware update months later. But it's always on the specs, but they just couldn't quite do it yet. But I think firmware updates are fine, but you'd have to charge for them. They'd have to be feature updates.
Like I said,
like Panasonic software keys.
If the feature is worth the money, I don't mind paying for it. You know, if there's a feature that I think is definitely beneficial for us, but that will be down to the user. You see, that is good because if you got different features coming out, and if you want that, you pay for that features that you want over time as an enhancement to what's already have. And I don't mind paying the upgrade instead of, because of that upgrade, we need a new camera. I think that's the argument I'm trying to throw at it. You know, rather than paying another £2,000 to get a new camera for that feature, I'd rather
just pay for the feature.
I'd rather, you know, paying £50 or £100 even for that feature on my old camera. And it works fine.
Maybe sell cameras in 2 tiers. You have the regular and you have the Pro. Yeah, it's almost a bit like Panasonic did with the S5 II and the S5 IIX, but they're a bit too close together, I thought. But if you know, like, I guess at some point we'll talk about the EOS R6 Mark III, but you could have the EOS R6 III Basic, which is very much like the R6 Mark II. Or you could have the Pro, which had all the fancy bells and whistles.
Yep.
And you might even buy the basic one, and you could pay a software key license to get the extras if you decided you wanted them.
Yeah.
Complicated.
It is complicated. It is complicated.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, everyone's. What do you think about what we're talking so far? Do you like to have a camera model that's lasts a bit longer? And when I talk about that, I mean like lengthening product cycle. So we're not going to get new camera models every 2-3 years, but instead we're going to get it every 5-6 years. Would you like that, or I don't know?
The thing is, that's where we already are. We don't have to buy these new cameras. If we think our camera's got 5 years of use in it, we can use it for 5 years. I guess. Possibly what we get most annoyed about is the constant sell. This kind of unease that we've got an old camera and we have to replace it. If we didn't buy them, they'd stop making them. If we weren't buying new cameras every couple of years, they'd swap to a 5-year cycle perhaps. So we're kind of doing it to ourselves. They wouldn't do it if it didn't make money.
Well, yeah. I mean, like to be honest, I mean, like. We're human natures, right? You know, like peer pressures, whatnot. You know, like when you see your fellow photographer holding a brand new shiny gear next to you, you're gonna get tempted. I was like, oh, that looks really nice, isn't it? And
and the other issue is that we're in an industry now where there are no consumables. There's no film, no developers. The labs can only work off old analog film. processes. Some might still print from digital, but nobody prints from images. So we kind of got the perfect world where nothing costs anything,
Yeah.
and the only revenue left is hardware.
Perhaps, and I want people to digest it a little bit, because I want to throw in another
I'm trying to
spanner.
digest it.
Trying to throw another spanner into the discussions now. You know, you see the thumbnail today in the title is well, photographers should learn from gamers, right? You know, so we talk a little bit about game console, which is more like hardware. You know, we talk about camera and things. But what about us as photographers? You know, like how we look at photography, how we enjoy our photography. I'm pretty sure I'm guilty of that. You know, I'm also, you know, apart from being a photographer myself, I'm also a gear nerd. I mean, I like to collect cameras. I like cameras in general. You know, that's probably true to a lot of you guys out there listening right now as well. You know, and if you're not, you are a pure artist, and I salute you for that. but I'm not as pure as that. You know, I like my photography. I like to create images, but at the same time, I do like cameras. I do like buying and collecting cameras when I can afford them, and it's just a hobby, right? But if you look at it, things in general these days, you look at simply looking at YouTube, for instance, look at contents being available on YouTube's. Almost 99.9% of the contents on YouTube are relating to gear. There is only very minute content creators or photographers really concentrating on the arts and crafts of photography, right? So even some of the older arts channel are now reviewing gear. Why is that happening? I mean, are we really pushing them to the point that, you know, basically no one's listening to learning photography, but rather looking at gear review and gear only?
I'd have to be terribly cynical at this point and say that you can't make money from a channel that doesn't talk about gear. And it's not simply that the audience for Gear Talk is bigger. It's because there's no affiliate revenue or no way to monetize a channel talking about photography. And photography itself, it's a terribly subjective thing. It's the sad fact is people get more excited about sensors than they do about composition, for example. So if you get a bunch of gamers in a pub, if they're old enough to go to a pub, they'll talk about when is Grand Theft Auto 6 actually going to come out. And how do you get past this scene? How do you deal with that bad guy? What's the biggest crash you've had this week? Whatever it is, they won't talk about the merits of different. I don't know whether PlayStation 5 still uses plug-in SSDs. They won't talk about one SSD versus another, or the graphics performance. They might talk about graphics performance with certain games. But there isn't the huge range of games playing hardware out there to have that conversation. You will have some massive arguments between console players and Windows gamers. Don't get those in the same room. That's not a good idea. So you do have that same kind of tribalism in that sense. But gamers are more concerned with the world they inhabit, the game they're in, and how that works. Whereas photographers don't seem to like to get into that very much. So you don't. If you've got a bunch of photographers in a bar, you wouldn't have a great conversation for an evening about the best shutter speed to use for this subject or that subject, or
exactly,
or what's the best high speed flash sync mode to use for this subject or that subject. Nobody seems to want to talk about technique or discoveries about photographs, which is peculiar. You'd have to go to a camera club and go to a competition judging night, which is different experience again. But those conversations around photography itself just don't seem to happen. It's not very clear why.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole point about why I wrote that title for today's chat. Is that that's how I found about today's photographers, or at least the one that I met anyway. A lot of them, when they talk, they don't talk about photography. They really don't talk about photography. They would talk about each
No.
other's gear. They would look at each other's
Yeah.
gear and they start talking about, oh, you got a new camera there. How does it feel? And oh, you got a new lens there. Is it sharp in the center? Is that what they they still kind of revolve talking about gear than actually about what they're there for, to start with.
I mean, even if you say coming along tonight, bring 10 prints, we'll talk about them. You're not gonna get past the first print before somebody says, "Oh, what did you shoot that with?"
Yeah,
and then straight away you're back in the gear, aren't you?
Yeah,
it's strange. It's strange.
It is strange, but I don't know whether you anyone feel the same way as I do. Because I think that we should be promoting more about the arts and crafts of photography, the skills behind it, the meaning behind it, and more about the essence of photography. And but like you said, I understand that because it's how the trend is going, how people are consuming contents are based on these things, and which means that those are genuinely more about learning photography or teaching photography. Those channels are suffering because no one seems to care about them, and if you don't watch those stuff, and the algorithm will simply discard them, because no one's watching them. They're not making YouTube any money, and why promote that video? As simple as that. And unfortunately, it's automated. So the less you watch them, the more they're gonna get buried, and they're never gonna get discovered.
YouTube will always give you more of what you last watched.
Yep.
So you're just going to get more of the same. Perhaps what we need to return to kind of Soviet communism, where there's only one camera and you can only buy one film, and then we wouldn't be talking about cameras and gear anymore. We'd only be talking about photography. That's the answer. One camera, one film, no digital stuff at all.
But be careful you say the way you just said it there. Like what if one day one camera maker dominates the whole world? We're just going to give us one camera brand and one model.
Well,
then we lose the choices.
Then we got to decide which one it is. That's going to be awkward. That's going to start some arguments.
Would you like a Canon tomorrow or another Canon tomorrow?
Well, same one, same Canon. Yes, Canon only.
Yeah.
Well, if we could only have one. If we could only have one.
Yeah.
And that would be it forever. What would it be?
Yeah.
That's all.
So I think that, because of that, I think we are somehow to blame ourselves. So, I mean, as much as I like gear myself, I think we should really pay more attention to some genuine photographer making contents when they actually talk about photography, when they actually showcasing photography and how we can learn from each other. I'm still learning every day as a photographer, and to be quite frank, it's not that I'm perfect in my own way. So I'm still trying to look for my next development, my next evolutions, because the good thing about photography is that there's no ending about it. There's no ending about where you can learn or how much you can learn. It's always going to continue to improve if you keep at it.
I think the trouble with constant evolution and progress is you're always looking at the present and the future. You forget to look back and learn from what you did before and see what's changed. Because quite often, I think the way you used to do things or see things, you can often think, oh, do you know what? That was right. I should be doing that. I had something there, but I became distracted, went a different way. I should go back to what I was doing. But I think the advantage of building up a photo library over many, many years is you get to compare what you're doing now with what you did before. But you also get to compare the images with the images you had before. So my image library that I use for things like how-tos or demonstrating techniques or editing walkthroughs, I have images going back to 2010. And I'm still using some of those if the image is right. Because they're not technically useless. They're actually all right for my needs. So that is why I'm kind of resistant to buy new cameras for the sake of it. But something else happened to me recently, which reminded me sometimes things get worse, not better. So I tested this Kodak half-frame film camera, and I noticed that the prints I got back from it were quite unlike any of my current digital images, which kind of prompted me to think, if I like this old print so much, can I actually get the same look digitally? And it's like quite difficult. It's quite difficult because film has completely different characteristics. So I'm not going to turn this into a kind of, oh, we should all shoot film thing. But my point is that digital cameras don't always become better. And digital cameras are not necessarily better than film cameras were before. They're different.
Yeah.
So quite often, a lot of the changes in cameras
Yep.
go in a direction which we might not necessarily want. It's like AI subject recognition.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's useful. Very often, the thing you're photographing that you want in focus doesn't correspond to any of the things the camera is trained to recognize. It's a development that might possibly save you time in certain situations, but it isn't actually particularly useful. But if it then becomes mainstream, so that actually choosing what you focus on becomes a minority feature buried in the menus, in that sense, the cameras could be getting worse, not better, because they're taking away functions that we relied upon for the sake of cleverness.
Yeah, so you can say that. I'm just looking at some comments, actually quite interesting here. The Angela Playful One, Joe Undone is another big YouTuber, and I used to like his video. I used to like his video. I think it's quite technical in some ways, and it's it's quite good. And he actually said in this comment here, say that the majority of the people who watch his videos are the one who want to buy that camera. I think that is true for literally all review videos that people are watching. People watch reviews because they want to get their camera. They want to learn about it. They want to see if they can justify them to buy them. And also at the same time, people who watch them may already have bought the camera, and they just want to validate the reason buying them. And then
they want reassurance. They want reassurance, and they want the backup of an expert if ever they have to justify it. I think there's a lot of that. We're all quite defensive about our choices, I think.
And that is what's happening right now. And because of that, you often find that those videos that got the most views are the ones that are popular. Yeah, and when I say popular models. Yeah, even within the Sony cam or whatever, you will find that one or two models are particularly more interesting, and then you see loads and loads of views because people buy those cameras, right? And not so much for the others. And same is with any brands. So from just judging from the number of views already showing how popular a brand or a camera is already. So you don't, it's quite a general things. Even like back then when Michael Four Thirds first came out, you can see like Michael Four Thirds was the big thing, and then and a lot of the Michael Four Thirds videos came out will get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, and mine's included. And as the market evolved, the Michael Four Thirds community getting smaller, and you also see the same thing about the views drop. It's not because the contents are not better or whatever. It's just simply because the popularity of the models or the format has diminished, and it's how it is. It does reflect how people are seeing products or even have that interest to buy the product in the first place.
I think it doesn't help that Google's algorithms quickly, if I can put it this way, polarize popularity. They will make something explode.
Yes. And
they'll show that if the algorithms think a topic is trending, they'll show it to everybody. Yep. If they think if nobody's watching it or they think it's not trending, they'll show it to nobody. So you get this exaggerated difference in popularity between some videos and others.
Well, and a very prime example with the Fujifilm X100, right? It's the X105. It just went viral with a few content creators, and that's it. And that kind of propelled Fujifilm
like an infection. One person got it, then we all got it.
I mean, it's weird, right? It's that one model, that few videos that kind of became a golden ticket for Fujifilm to almost make them what they are today. And it wasn't because of the popularity that they gained from X100. I'm really doubtful the digital camera market will be as successful as they are today. The Instax market is very different, but I'm pretty certain, like the X100 has kind of make themselves visible to a lot of the young buyers and fashion conscious buyer and those who consume TikToks like constantly.
I think as well that professional creators will spend a lot of time looking for trends and then jumping on them.
Yeah.
So this is possibly what's happened.
Oh,
what's happened here?
Exactly. You know, like because of how popular X100 is, and you'll find that there's so many content creators just go and buy that camera for the sake of making videos on those cameras, and it has a knock-on effect. It basically is a snowball, right? The more content is generating around the X100, that YouTube will think, okay, this must be a trending topic. This is a trending thing because they all hashtag the video. So as long as you see X100 hashtag, is popular, and they know you're going to push that content out.
So in my old job, one of the key morning activities was having a quick browse through Google Trends to see what's trending, and then do a story on that. It's how professional content creators work. So this will lead to exaggerated coverage of particular cameras. I'm not quite sure how we got into this, but that's how the whole YouTube thing works. But that's how the YouTube thing works. So for a long time, the Sony A7S III, that was everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's because people
the high resolution thing
who post content, people who post content for a living figured everyone's writing about this. I need to be doing it too. So the algorithms go mad as if that's the only camera in the world.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. Sadly.
So in some ways, if any of us, including myself, who wants to get away from this kind of crazy norm, is just by basically you can still consume those content, but not to the extent that you watch every single one of them. But if you really want if you want to buy that camera, if you're really interested in that camera, I would just rather go to the bloody camera store and hold it in my hand and try it myself.
It's yes, quite. You have to pick these things up and try them before you know, because what suits one person won't suit another. The Olympus pens suit me much better than the DSLR style Olympus and home system cameras. It's a purely personal thing, judged on specifications. My two pen cameras are really rather dated and behind in terms of tech, but I prefer those. I prefer the experience of using them.
Yeah.
So this is why you should always get a camera in your hands before you decide. It's I'd a Lumix S52X for a weekend for reviewing some lenses, and on paper I thought this is the camera for me. But I spent 2 days with it. No, don't like it. But you don't know till you have your hands on the camera, and it's going to be different for everyone.
It is. I mean, I know I may be the only odd one out who doesn't like the Fujifilm X-T5. It's not that I don't like Fujifilm. Now that I actually got two Fujifilm cameras now, believe me or not, but I just can't get along with the X-T5. That's only me.
I had mine for about a year, but I was left kind of lukewarm about it. Really, it did everything I wanted it to do, but I just couldn't quite warm to it, and I can't easily say why. But this kind of loops back to our argument. If you find a camera that you like, that feels right in your hands and does what you need, don't buy another until you have to.
No.
Skip the next one, get the one after.
that is quite true. And I always, even in computing terms, I always say that, like you should really skip 1 or even 2 generations before you upgrade. Because computing world, smartphones included, or tablets, whatever, any technologies, right? The updates or the increase in performance or advancements are not going to be huge from generation to generation. You really have to skip the 2-3 generations before you really notice that big leap and big jump in speed or whatever. And I still hold true to that. If you're happy with your camera right now, if you bought it this year, thinking about maybe 5, 6, 7 years, then you'll see the next big upgrade. Because from the next generation, which is maybe 2 years on, from now, you got the next generation come out, and then you look at the spec. Oh yeah, it looks cool. It looks good, but when you hold the camera, when you start using it, you might actually find that the improvement is actually quite minimum.
Well, and make sure that what's improved is actually something you're going to use.
Yeah.
And not just improvement for the sake of it. I see in the comments, John Young makes a point, you need to support camera stalls. Absolutely. Because when they're gone, they're gone.
And you won't be able to
And
try the cameras.
and I think from my experience, because I was involved a lot in e-commerce in my old job, where you have to watch these things and keep track of them. In my experience in the UK, Wex and Jessups and Park cameras will always have the same deals from the makers, and you're going to have to work quite hard to beat it on Amazon. And if you do, you better make sure you know where it's coming from, so you're not paying duties or getting a grey import, or some other issues. And in the States, B&H and Adorama, I think probably Best Buy as well, always have the same prices. So just go in the store, have a look, buy it physically. I would always say that, because if the stores go, they're not going to come back. And there's nothing quite like ambling around a camera store. Honestly,
don't we miss the old days, right? When you going into the camera store and nerd it all out with the salesman, like start talking about lenses and cameras and just touching all of them, whether you buy them or not doesn't really matter. But it's quite a good day out if you're nerdy about photography and gear and things like that. Try out different camera bags, and you can spend a few hours in that shop.
all they need in a camera store is a corner with a couple of sofas, a couple of chairs, a coffee machine, and maybe a few books, so they can go in and have a cup of coffee, have a little look around, have a little chat, read a book, have a nice little morning out. I'll suggest that next time I'm in my local camera store.
I actually saw someone talking about camera books earlier. I think it was one of you guys. I'm just trying to see where it is now. The common, and then basically, like camera books, right? I still like camera books. They are getting rarer and rarer these days, and people, instead of actually buying a photo book from a known photographer or from a famous past masters, and they just scroll through the internet, googling images and things.
The experience is completely different. I mean, people who like books will know this already.
You need to see the print. I think that and that is still something that bugs me all the time. I mean, if you're a photographer, if you consider yourself a photographer, please look at some prints. Even print your own. You do need that photograph.
Even if it's prints in a book, they're quite good quality these days. You still get a better feel for the image than looking at a screen. I think there's enough digital interaction in our lives as it is. You need something for your hands to do, and a book is the way to do it.
Well, I mean, if you look at the definition of photograph, right, it actually means a print, and the physical medium. What we see on screen now, they're not photographs; they're images. They are digital projections of an image. So like, it's different. It's really different. You really do need to physically hold and touch the prints and things.
It's quite awkward. Like when I was some of my prints on this Kodak half-frame camera, I had to reproduce them digitally for putting on in my review, and I realised that what I was doing was I had to explain to people. Remember, what you're seeing here is a digitized version of a print from the negative, so you're already like 2 steps removed from the original. But this is one of the difficulties, isn't it? That what things on a screen don't look the same as they do in print.
No, they look very different.
People have different screens. I have quite a good screen, quite high resolution. But if you don't have that, you get different colors, different contrast, everything.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that one thing that you will miss, or is that when you finally print something, whatever size it is, you will soon realize a few things. Dynamic range doesn't mean a thing when it comes to print. Contrast, whatever you see on screen, is very different to print.
Yeah,
and then
every screen is different. Yeah,
and sharpness. The perceived sharpness printing on, depending on the texture or the type of paper you're printing on, is also different. Whether it's going to be 100 megapixel to 2 million megapixel doesn't really matter, depending on the size of the print and how far you.
I like that. So I know what you mean. Yes, of course. That's
the thing. For those who don't print, they not necessarily understand a lot of the time when people talk about, oh, I can shoot with a 10 megapixel, most photographers, they don't really care about resolution, myself included, unless, certain agencies like require me to do certain resolution. That's only a commercial decision, but not me. Personally, I'm quite happy with anything I shoot with. And in fact, I showed you guys my RD1X, the Epson RD1X, and then that's the 6 megapixel camera, which I still use. So there's nothing wrong with that. Like I could easily, record images with 6 megapixels, still easily print a 6x4, 7x5, even 10x8. I can still print those images. So it doesn't really matter.
So you shouldn't have bought all these cameras since then, Jimmy. You should have just bought one back in the day and stuck with it.
Yes, but it may not last. The back then the shutter probably only lasts about 50,000 actuations.
Yeah, I don't recall the Epson being particularly quick either. And you still
Very
had to use
slow.
rangefinder focusing, didn't you?
Very
As I
slow.
recall.
Very slow.
So sadly, yeah. So we do need to buy new cameras from time to time, but I think we can afford to skip a generation now and again.
So instead of buying a camera, buy a printer.
Well, I guess you could say that, but then that'll help Canon. So if you're a Canon
Epson still sell photo
help
printer.
your brand by buying a Canon. Epson doesn't make cameras anymore, so you're not going to help them very much. But
No, but they do scanner and printers, right?
oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Be supporting somebody.
Yeah.
A lot of people would feel that printer ink is a rip-off, but
the beauty of printing is that then you realize that you may be overshooting most of the time. Like if you think about printing, you can't print 1,000 pictures because you capture 1,000. You have to choose the one that you like the most to print.
So here's the thing I found out about printing. So here's one of my Kodak half-frame pictures. It's only 6x4. The visual quality of the print is I'm not saying it's better or worse than digital. It's just completely different.
Yeah.
The way the highlights roll off, the way the shadows are rendered, colors and contrast and everything is just quite different. But the thing is that this 6x4 is about as far as that camera will go because it's not sharp and there's quite a lot of grain. But you don't see it. In a 6x4 print, it's fine. So it's a reminder when you print stuff that maybe you're shooting at a far higher resolution than you actually need. I'm not saying we should all go to cheap old analog film cameras, but I think if you're tempted by, say, a 45 megapixel Lumix S1R2, then you just remember you're going to have to print a massive print before you're going to see any difference. You'll know there's a difference. You'll feel better about it because you've got more megapixels. But in practical terms, you have to go pretty big before it becomes important.
And depends how close you want to view the image as well.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the main reason printing big is so you can look at it from further away. So you're back where you started.
That's another argument, right? And but the thing is, you talk about like your pictures being grainy and not sharp, but in some way that's exactly what the trend is at the moment, right? Young people getting
in a 6x4 print, you don't see the grain and they look sharp. So that's my point. It's very low tech technology, but at this print size, you wouldn't know.
Well,
and one of my arguments is if you could even contemplate shooting with an Instax, where you get these tissue little prints, just get an old film camera and shoot with that.
Yeah,
you'll get nicer prints that are bigger. But we're talking about on-camera flash being the trend at the moment.
Yeah. And also old tech point and shoot, right? This really. There you go.
It's my no slow flash here. That is quite harsh, but it's a look that we remember. It's a look that we associate with kind of informal photography.
That's how we capture photos in the day, back in the days, and that's how we have our birthday pictures taken.
Exactly. So if I'd shot that with my phone or a digital camera, it would have looked completely different. You would say that it's technically far superior. Yeah. But in a funny kind of way, this particular look is back. And it turns out we miss it. Sorry, the dog's getting in the way now. Look, it's you. Satisfied? Good. Down you go. Down you go. So in a way, we have to be careful. We're not buying gear
Yeah.
that's new, and we're throwing away something we already liked. But
Yes.
that's probably a different argument. But I do think it's easy to feel you have to upgrade your camera because everybody you see online or in print or on a website tells you how much better it is.
Yep.
But you have to decide whether it's better in a way that's actually relevant or important. So I did think I've got an EOS R8. I thought for a long time I should have bought an EOS R6 II.
Yep.
Better handling,
Yep.
in-body stabilization. I never quite did because it was not better enough to justify it.
Yep.
All I have to do is make sure I put my current camera on a tripod and
Yep.
watch the shutter speeds.
It's quite interesting that you made that point there about the new camera or new features where it's going to be relevant to you,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
somehow that once you get used to the new technology, you simply can't go back to the old method of doing things.
That is true.
And-
that is true.
A good example, I recently met a very young photographer, and he's very young. He's only a 20-something, so he's kind of grow up with all those technologies that
Yes,
basically in modern digital cameras, like AI tracking, facial recognitions, and things like that. And that I gave him my my old, well, I wouldn't say old, but older type of cameras when there's no AI tracking, there's no human subject recognitions, nothing. So very old school, still got very good CAF and everything. And then he couldn't use it. He simply couldn't use it. He said, I couldn't get the shot in focus. Why is that? It doesn't see the face and eyes. I said, you don't need that, do you? You just move your focusing point and just point to that thing and then click, it will work. He said, but how? I said, well, you just move it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Like, does it make it like newer photographer, like, I wouldn't say lazy, but like so reliant on these new technologies, it's completely forgotten about how to operate a camera.
Well, yes, I think that is an issue. But then we have to be careful we don't start sounding like grumpy old men now, don't we?
Sounded like I am.
It does seem to me we're in the midst of a movement where we're abandoning the effort of education or self-education in favor of laziness. We'd rather have AI than learn to write. We'd rather have AI subject recognition AF than we would focus ourselves.
Yeah.
We seem to be currently obsessed with laziness and ignorance. Anything that will enable us to do both of those things rather than having to learn anything. So
yeah,
I know how that sounds. I'll shut up now. But it's difficult not to feel that way. For the sake of just learning a couple of things, all of the rest of it becomes unnecessary. If you learn how an old SLR works, shutter speed, aperture, and focus, it's so simple. You just had to make a bit more effort when you're taking a picture. And I think this is where we are. The consumer market's become very effort averse. I'm going to invent a phrase, effort averse. Quite hard to say.
It is. Well, we're just going to the comment here, just popped up, and AI photography is just a keyboard and a computer. And the art of learning your gear is almost non-existent.
It is, I think, in a way. And I also, while I do take a lot of pictures with my phone, because I'm not at all snobbish about the device I use to take pictures, I'd rather turn a dial than tap an icon. It just feels more natural to me because human beings do have hands, and it's human nature to use them.
I don't know about anyone's listening, but then when I actually make an effort to photograph something or to capture that image, and then that physicality of actually changing the camera or moving the camera, or that just that effort alone, it makes me feel like I'm actually doing something. And
It's like
when it's
it's like a
automated,
physical interaction
yeah, when it's
with the
automated,
universe.
when it's automated, that's when I think that why even bother?
You
You know,
agree?
when it gets so simple, and
Well,
then I don't
I
know,
think
you just
I think on a purely practical level, if I'm taking a picture with my phone and I can see I need to focus on a particular point and adjust the
yeah,
exposure, that is quite a tricky little touch screen operation.
yeah,
Whereas if I'm using my camera, I just
yep,
turn a dial with my thumb and it's done. So I think in many ways a kind of digital experience can often get in the way where a physical controls are just more direct and more intuitive. This is just me being a grumpy old man again.
yeah. We all getting old, I guess. That's why we're
I
moaning. That's why we're
I think
moaning.
I think I think there are probably grumpy young men that might feel the same way as well. You just want that physical interaction.
I like to really, if I do capture something really nice, I want to be able to tell the story when I get home, or when I show that picture to people, I have a story to tell. Oh man, I have to climb that mountain or go there. I sit for 5 hours. I have to do this and that to capture this
Yeah.
light. Not like now. You can probably get some nice looking images on Instagram and things, which are very likely
Or
to be manipulated and enhanced.
just use an AI prompt or tell you drone to go and get a nice picture and come back when it's done it.
Yeah. Just hover in the air for the next 40 minutes and you capture the shot when you need.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we can't be very far away from autonomous drones
Yep.
that go and do our bidding. Then you
And
wouldn't have to leave the house at all.
and by then, what's the point about photography, right? There's no point.
So in my imaginary future, we tell our drone to go and take some pictures, pick the best ones, put them on Instagram, and tell us what the likes were.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to do anything.
No. I mean, I hope that day won't come. And but the problem is, I did ask. I bring back the Kyra camera because I had a discussion when I was talk about the camera before. I spoke to Visha Kumar, the CEO, that some of you guys seen in our interview. So in theory, what you can do or what you can ask Kyra to do is to automate the entire process. You see the Canon R6 III, because I use that as an example. So because now you can register 10 faces, right, in the R6 III. So you can register a face. So basically AI will recognize that face. It will keep locking onto that face for focusing purposes. So technology is there. So that means that, let's say Kyra can recognize people, same thing as what R6 III does. But not only just that, but you can prompt it by basically asking the camera to understand the action. Okay, do that when he's up in the air in midair, when he's dancing or jumping or doing certain action. The camera will see the whole entire sequence because it's live all the time. And when it sees it, just that perfect moment, it snaps it. So
But then all I would say there is that that's quite a complex prompt. And every time you set up something as complex and specific as that, you then have to undo it and start again when you want to do something different.
oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Of course,
So
but
this is,
what I'm just trying to say is just in theory, basically it can be done because the AI can now register a lot of things, and if you
But
start to understand,
are we in danger of confusing things that are clever with things that are useful? Because
it's not useful
because
at all.
something is clever, no.
but I was just curious from a technological point of view,
Yeah.
what can
Yeah.
AI do when it comes to capturing images? For instance, the reason I brought up that argument is because like in wildlife photography, there are occasions when the photographer themselves didn't really capture the photograph. Let's say they set up triggers
Yeah.
at night
Yeah,
because
yeah, of
some
course, yeah.
animals
Yeah.
can only come at night, and you simply cannot be close to the animal either. So what they do
Yeah.
is they set up trigger and have a camera
Yeah, of
ready.
course, yeah.
So when the animal passes the trigger, it basically alert the system and it trigger
Yeah.
the shutter button and capture the shot. So
Yeah.
this autonomous photography does exist for many years. We already know
Oh,
that.
yes, yeah.
So
Yeah.
what if AI
Yeah.
can do that? That's what the argument was. So what if I put
But
Kyra there, and Kyra register, instead of having a trigger, but you register the animal comes in, and I just basically asked Kyra, can you take 100 shots continuously through that when you see the animal?
but then but then you could equally well do this with very old tech and
Yeah.
just say and just set the thing up to start filming as soon as the trigger, and then you extract a still as required from the film.
Yeah.
So it doesn't require AI.
No,
What
it
it does
doesn't.
require is a need.
Yeah.
So the fact that something is possible, it does not necessarily mean it's useful. But
Yeah.
I
I just
do think
we're just
I do
reinventing the
think
view here.
I do think we tend to get carried along by camera makers who show us remarkable things that are possible, and we forget to check that they're actually useful or
Then
or apply
then
to
how
us.
then how do you feel about the R63's facial recognition feature?
I don't know enough about it. Is that the one that can recognize people and make sure they?
They stay in focus.
Yeah, I think that's fine. If you're a professional sports photographer
Yep.
who's doing a gig where you're required to get shots of a particular player for particular promotional purposes, makes a whole lot of sense. But you're talking about a very narrow
Yep.
area of usefulness. It's not something that every photographer will use every day. It's very clever, and very occasionally it might be useful, and it makes for some great videos on the internet. And
Yep.
it's a clear indication of something the new camera can do that the one before it couldn't do. But will it actually be useful? And how
Well,
long will it take to set it up and unravel it once you've done
yeah.
it?
Well, but that brings back to the exact point that we were talking about since the beginning, right?
Oh, good,
So
good. We got back
so
to it.
so like the R6 II. If I'm not talking about video capability, because R6 III
Yes,
video
yeah.
capabilities are much better than the R6 II. But when it comes to
Yeah.
stills, when it's just coming about photography, regardless of the resolution, because the R6 III has a much higher resolution sensor, but you just talk about pictures, right? Taking pictures.
Yeah.
Apart from the new feature, which is the facial recognition, everything is more or less the same.
Yeah. And
So-
you mentioned about the resolution. It's 32.5, is that right?
Yes.
Versus 24.
Yep.
That's not a very big linear difference in height and width. It's worth having, but it's what was that? Was it Oscar Wilde who said about a play that it's worth seeing but not worth going to see? So if you're right there and it's in front of you, watch
Yeah.
it, but don't go to the theatre. So you might say that I would suggest it's a similar thing with the extra resolution. It's worth having, but it's
Yep.
not worth going to the trouble of getting. But
Yep.
I think as well on the video side, I know that the Mark III does 7K open gate video.
Yes. Yes.
That's a pretty serious technical achievement.
Yes.
But the previous one did very good oversampled 4K video, which is
Yep.
what most people will be shooting. Even my EOS R8 does very good 4K. So, it's a technical advance, and you think this camera is so much better because it does that.
Yep.
But then you've got to say to yourself, am I going to do that? And
Yeah.
unless you say, 7K open gate video is what I've been waiting for, then it makes sense.
Yep.
If you say, I don't really shoot video, it's a feature you don't need. And I think as well, we get swept along with the idea that because the new camera is much more powerful, it's better. But as you pointed out with stills photography, it's really not so very different.
No.
So that's where we've got to be careful.
Because the advancements in photography capturing capability hasn't really advanced that much, apart from just being faster and high resolution. Everything is just pretty much the same. Yes, ISO sensitivity, noise performances may be better over time, but again, unless we need to use high ISO shooting a lot, which majority of us probably don't, because if you go traveling, and if you are a landscape photographer, unlikely you're going to shoot like 6400 ISO all the time, right? You're going to be using a tripod, you're going to be doing things, and
I think, wildlife photography does score indoor sports.
Yep. But again,
key
they are
examples,
very
but
specific genre of photography.
I know when I was doing camera reviews, I might get a camera that say goes out to ISO 12800, so I got to test that. I had to work out some pretty extreme scenarios and do some pretty stupid things with the settings to demonstrate it, because in normal everyday photography, I don't find myself needing those ISOs.
No.
So it's
And
difficult, isn't it? It's like the stacked sensor with the
yeah,
OM5, sorry, OM5, it's not OM5, the
OM3 or OM1.
OM3
Yep, yep.
and OM1, 1 and 2. Great idea. I believe it's technically superior at higher ISOs, but I've found the difference to be so small that it's not worth getting it just for that reason. If I did a lot more action photography, the stack sensor on a higher burst speeds would be useful. But I made a decision that where it counts for what I do, the OM3 is not necessarily a huge leap up from what I have at the moment.
Yep.
It's much better, but in directions that I don't really go in.
No, I mean you're quite right there. You know, like I told everybody I recently got the Fujifilm X-H2S camera, which has a 26 megapixel stack sensor. So basically APS-C version of the OM1. And I compare those image files to the non-stack 26 megapixel of the XM5. I actually don't see much of a difference when it comes to noise performance or anything in practical terms, right? And I do push the ISO and bring back the highlight and push up the shadow and all sorts of stuff to manipulate the image. I do all of that every single day. And during normal shooting environments, you know, up to even like 3200 ISO, I don't really see that major difference there. And I don't really usually go beyond 3200, you know, seriously, unless I get into very extreme situations when I have to really push the ISO to get the shutter speed that I want. Then I will have to do that. But otherwise, you know, I still really try to shoot as low as possible, just like any photographers would do.
And I think I know that you shoot video as well. I suppose a good argument there is a stacked sensor will always give you less rolling shutter.
Absolutely,
than
yes.
a non-stacked sensor. But then you had to ask the question, do you shoot in a way where you're going to get rolling shutter? And if you say, no, I don't shoot that way anyway, it becomes unnecessary. If you're going to use a gimbal and do fast camera movements, then you probably need it.
Yep.
But if you shoot your video on a tripod with static subjects or just do very slow camera movements, you probably don't need it. So again, it's choosing the tech that you actually know you need rather than just getting something newer because it's newer.
Well, actually, there's another element of it with the being fast, the readout sensors is when we talk about rolling shutter, there's another aspects of it that not many people actually talk about, and you know, like we a lot of reviews that you see or even read online is that when people are testing the shutter readout speed when it comes to videos and looking at rolling shutters, they always basically move the camera left and right very fast to see how much it distorts, right?
Yeah.
But there's also another things that that you can manipulate that to see how fast the sensor is, and it does actually affect the image quality, even when the camera is stationary. So if you put the camera stationary on the tripod, if there's a fast car sudden zoom past you,
right? Yes,
you actually see, you know, and a slow sensor is basically rendering the fast passing car completely distorted. And even when the camera's stationary.
If you're filming somebody going through a golf swing, you kind of want a fast sensor, otherwise it's their club, the shaft of the club is going to look like a banana.
Oh yes.
Because it's going to bend as they swing. So there are instances where you need a stacked sensor. For stills photography, it's if you're going to do a lot of high speed work. For video, it does kind of make sense. A fast readout, but make sure that what you're buying is what you actually need.
Oh yeah, need what want, right? We all want better things. We all want faster things. We talked about that, right? You know, we be sure that you prioritize need over want, because we all want better things, right? You know, and that's human nature as well.
I sold my Olympus 60mm macro a couple of years ago because I thought
Oh,
it's because I thought, oh well, no, just get the happy endings to that story. Because I thought, well,
okay.
do you know what? I'm going to do this kind of stuff on full frame.
Yeah,
Uh, but then more recently, I've started photographing my old films because it's a hell of a lot quicker than scanning. You can't buy
yeah.
scanners anymore anyway. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I need a camera that's quite light with a good macro lens. So I rebought a 60mm 2.8, which arrived today, in fact, and it's just brilliant. But that was need not want. I sold it because I thought I didn't want it, but it turned out I needed it. So,
Oh well.
so
Uh,
luckily, I paid what I sold the old one for, so it worked out.
oh, that's all right. That's okay.
Lucky, very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess just going back to some of the stuff we talked about, in many ways, is the way that the market is today is a lot to do with not just the maker themselves, but how we behave as photographers and how we, rather than focusing on the art of photography or how to be a better photographer. And then we suddenly became a gear nerd and keep looking for numbers and looking at speed and looking at specs and all the other stuff. I said, there's nothing wrong with it. Like I'm happy about buying cameras and I wouldn't ask you to stop it if that's what you like to do and being collectors and hobbyists.
Yeah, for sure.
That's nothing wrong with that.
How
many
cameras have I got? Not as many as you, Jimmy, but quite a few.
No, I got too many. I need to sell some now. Yeah, but I think the fact is, I think that we should be also at the same time really starting to pay some more attentions on some of the aspects of photography.
This is we forget why we're doing this stuff. That's the danger.
Yes. Yes.
And you start to lose the joy in creating images.
Yeah.
If you're just completely fixated on lens performance and megapixels and dynamic range and all of that stuff. On the subject of dynamic range, I still haven't got a camera that's better at dynamic range than my old Nikon. You would have thought something as important as that would have seen some development. Not really.
Yeah.
Hey ho. I seem to, from what we were talking about before the chat, Jimmy, you think the EOS R6 Mark III is quite good, don't you?
I do think so.
Right?
Yes.
Do you want to say why, or are you going to save that for another time?
I'll say for another time because I'm actually making a video, not actually the review, not reviewing the camera because I haven't got one, and but. It's another topic altogether. In fact, actually, someone actually mentioned in the comments much earlier in today's chat, and I saw that comment and said, "Oh, that's the video I'm making," so I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay.
But let's just give you a summary about the R6 III, and just at least from what I've seen, from what I've learned so far, is that it's quite a capable camera, and for the price that I think is very decent in today's market. And for what it brings you when it comes to the amount of stuff it can do for you, depend obviously what you do as a profession or as a hobbyist. Still photography wise, I don't see like I already said, we already discussed it. I don't think still is a much improvement compared to R6 II, but the video side is a massive bump there, and that means that if you do use a mirrorless camera or Canon camera to film or to use as a video tool, this is actually a very good camera. Even I would say better than the R5. It is for the price. This is much cheaper than the R5. So I think as a package, it's a great tool. It's a great camera, and if people are in a Canon cam wants to spend that kind of money for getting a mid-range cameras, or spending a mid-range camera but get a high-end camera features, I think the R6 kind of win for everyone.
If so, I think I would probably agree. Just make sure that you are somebody who's going to use that 7K open gate video.
Oh yeah, of course.
You're paying for it, so make sure you need it. Yeah. I could see myself needing it because I'm doing my product photography where I often have to be in the frame, either explaining something or turning dials. I'm tending to do that now with video, not stills. So I'll film
Yeah.
it and then extract stills at suitable points. It's actually proving far more efficient because none of my cameras will focus while the cell timer is running down. It's how stupid is that? You have to focus before you start the cell timer. That's
Yeah.
just insane.
Yeah.
Drives me mad.
I do that as well. I just extract a frame out from the video to do thumbnails.
Dude, yeah,
I do.
I think it's
I do.
and I find the 4K video is easily good enough if
Oh yeah.
it's a decent sort of
Well,
camera. Even
well,
if it only shoots 4K.
a 4K frame is 8 megapixels, so you know it's a size that you can print.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a little large for what I need for posting online, but yeah, it's fine. And also, you get to choose the perfect moment. You do
Yeah.
get. If you're moving, you will get some blur. So
Yeah.
you have, when you're filming yourself, you have to make sure you pause at key
Yep.
moments so you know you're going to be able to get a still frame. But
Or should
yeah,
a 50 frame per second, you get a much better chance of nailing a sharp shot.
yes, in my kitchen in November, that would be about ISO 10 million probably.
Well, there you go.
But
That's a
yeah,
reason to get a 10 million
yeah,
ISO camera.
quite. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that sums up today's discussion. It really is that I think we should actually kind of take notes in some of what gamers are doing. You know, while they like to talk about gear and the performance of the PC or the game consoles, but they also at the same time they very much into the gameplay strategies and learning how to beat the next level, whatever.
It's the game. It's the game that they're utterly absorbed in,
Yes.
not the hardware, not the platform.
So
why aren't we like gamers?
Yeah, so gamers are focusing on game. Why aren't photographers focusing on photography instead of freaking cameras and lenses?
That's a very good question.
Yes, so I think we should kind of take notes for it, and I do really urge people to maybe start digging YouTubes and starting to maybe trying to discover some new channels that people are genuinely talking about photography than just simple gear review, because
modern cameras give you too much to talk about.
Yep.
Because if you go back in the dim and distant past to film SLRs,
yeah,
they all did the same things. You know, one had Olympus might have a focus ring turning in a different direction to Pentax, but you know, you're not going to argue about that in a pub for hours on end, are you? They all had a viewfinder, a wind-on lever, shutter speed dial, an aperture ring, and that's all there was.
Yeah.
All the talk was films developing darkroom techniques, composition, lighting.
So next time, if we do some kind of meetup with all of you guys in London somewhere or whatever, you know, and I really hope that we can have a nice photography chat, and we can bring a photo, bring a print,
bring 6 prints, and don't mention the camera.
Yep, we talk about photograph and the story, why and how you capture that photos. And we're gonna we can nerd it all out about the photograph that you take, not the camera.
Yeah. And everyone who actually mentions any bit of kit has to go and sit on another table for 5 minutes before they can rejoin the conversation.
Yeah. And also at the same time, why you know that now I don't make many tutorial videos on YouTube because no one watches it.
No, this is
which is sad reality.
Any kind of technique content. It doesn't get the same engagement as ranting about gear, which is it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah,
it's not how photography is meant to be.
Yeah, I know. We should change today's subjects now. Otherwise, no one's going to watch us.
Yeah, there is that. Or we have a little competition to see who can get through an entire talk without mentioning gear.
Yeah. How about we start talking about photography in the next few chats instead of gear nerds?
We can have some arguments about. We can have some good arguments about composition.
Oh,
I've got a few things to say about the rule of thirds.
Okay.
I had an argument with one of my friends the other week about the rule of thirds.
Or cropping images.
said,
I like to talk about crops.
Yeah, but then we'll talk about megapixels, won't we? And we got to so be careful. Be very careful.
No, not talk about resolution crop, but about cropping images as a final presentation.
Oh, I know. But
Yeah,
then somebody's going to say, I never do that because I don't like losing megapixels. So it's a trap. It's a trap, Jimmy. You have to be very careful.
There you go.
I think composition, cropping, exposure is an interesting one because we just let our cameras get on with it. And most of the time, what they produce is a kind of middle of the road, quite boring. Because cameras don't know half as much about exposure as they like us to think. They just go for something down the middle, and we think it's all right, and it's usually not. So
right. This side to a screen actually suggests that let's have a tip jar, right? You know, everyone talk about gear. You put a note in the jar.
It's like a swear box.
Yeah, like a swear box.
Yeah, we can make a fortune.
Oh, yes. You're making even more than YouTube pays us.
Yeah.
Every video you see, you put a note in the jar. Every gear video you watch, you put a note in the jar. See how much you can save, right? You probably get like a few hundred pounds by the end of it.
I think you could buy some more gear then, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, exactly.
No,
exactly.
Just don't.
Right.
So
okay.
I don't know how we get out of it, but it'd be good if we could.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys support our movement, when I say movement,
well, we should just do this now and again. Reserve a talk for just photography where we do talk about stuff like cropping and composition and exposure, focusing, depth of field. There's lots of things we can talk about where we might all have different opinions, but some of us might have ideas and tips and techniques that others hadn't thought of.
Okay.
Or we might have a particular successful approach.
I got an idea.
People might find useful.
I got an idea about everyone who can chip into this. Is that use the comment section after this chat today. Suggest us any photograph that you see, whether it's new or old, doesn't matter. Yeah, and someone you know that you think is a brilliant photograph. Let's bring those in for the next chat. And we talk about this photograph, whether I like it or whether Rod likes it. You know, let's talk a little bit of reasons behind why I think it's a great photograph or not. And you know, everyone's got their own opinion. There's no right or wrong answers here. You know, like if I like that photograph, you may not like it. It doesn't really matter. But we want to have something discussions out of it. You know, for instance, if you like Steve McCurry's Afghan Girl photograph, you know, let's bring that in. Let's talk about that photograph. You know, what makes it such an iconic photo? What's good? What's bad about it? And then we can talk about all of that stuff. Henri Cartier-Bresson's Jumping Pond, you know, and all of this famous. We can bring anything, whether it's going to be some iconic photos that you like or something that you recently discover, and they just let me know where you can find the image, or can bring that in. We can have a talk about that.
Yeah, and as long as it's not like the old camera club judging night where you have rules, where that doesn't work because it's not on the third. That doesn't work. That doesn't work because it's subjects looking out of the frame. No, not so much about rules, just discussion about things that work, even if it's unexpected. Things that work that shouldn't work, or things that you like, even if other people don't, because it's an entirely subjective thing. There's no right or wrong.
Absolutely.
It's not like you're voting. You know, 9 don't like it, 1 doesn't, 1 does, so it's bad. It's not that. It's just bringing something new to the conversation.
Absolutely. There really isn't right or wrong answers there. You know, like it's just nice to have a discussions about. A photograph or photography in general, you know, is something about that. Why we started the whole hobby in the first place, you know, why we suddenly want to pick up a camera and capture images, right? And if you enjoy photography, you should enjoy photographs. If you do enjoy photograph, let's talk about photographs, and then we can
talk about the photographs. Yeah.
Then we can we can definitely talk about discuss about all these photographies
and also how we take photographs, an approach that works for us. So, for example, very often I go to a place, I have to walk around it quite a lot to start to understand where the photographs are.
Yes.
Other people know straight away, we all work differently. That I found quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's probably the way to improve photography in general. That's how we learn from this stuff, and then do
Need
it.
to learn to love it again.
Yes.
Instead of just being fixated on gear.
Learn to love it again. Sounds big words.
Yeah.
Have we lost it already? Have we lost it already?
Well, have we? Have we become so absorbed with the technicalities, the photography's become secondary?
Oh, that's a good title. Right. That's very important to understand and know. Right. Okay. Well, shall we do that? Maybe we bring in one of the chats and look at some of the images, and we could kickstart it, and then Rod and I will choose some photographs that I personally like and Rod personally like, and then
you can all rip them to shreds, but maybe we'll start to understand how people see differently at the end.
Yeah. But if there are any photographs that you really like, please let us know, and then we'll bring them into the chat room here, and then we can talk about them and why they're so good. Yeah.
Copyright permitting. So if they buy any famous photographer, the intellectual property rights can get a little murky if we're putting them on YouTube.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine for in terms of putting for copyright reasons and this is educational use. We're studying them, so it's totally fine. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's fine. Fine.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
So that's it. So we can bring in any images you want. So we let's talk about photography for once. Not that we ever talked about them.
That would be nice. That would be lovely. Yes.
Yeah, and then, that will be a really good fresh change, and we can all enjoy a little bit of what we love. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
We'll also. Yeah, good.
Yeah, okay. People seem to agree, so let's do this then. Okay, in that case, we're gonna end today's chat. And I think your dog is getting a little bit impatient now.
yeah, it's tea time, walk time, play time, everything.
Yeah.
So
okay, awesome. In that case, we're gonna leave you guys, and we're gonna come back very soon. And also, it's not too far from Christmas, so maybe we have a little bit of a kind of year-end celebration, bring some bubbly into the show, and we can get drunk halfway and see what happens.
Okay.
Give some to your dog as well. Give some to your dog as well. They might fall asleep.
Yeah, calm it down a bit. Come on.
All right, guys. Okay, in that case, I'll see you all very soon.
Yep.
Bye now.
See you next time. Bye.